Okay, yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Let's see, we got everyone in. Perfect. Welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. I'm very excited to kick off our Drupal, our first, well, it's the first in a little while of our DrupalTO online meetup. Drupal Toronto was founded in 2006 and is the third oldest Drupal group in existence. And we are very happy to have you join us today, where we can reconnect with regulars from the meetup and meet new folks from all over the place. Drupal Toronto, let me just, yes, Drupal Toronto, we have a code of conduct. So DrupalTO is dedicated and committed to providing a harassment-free experience for everyone, regardless of gender, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, body size, race, or religion. If anyone runs into any challenges, such as I've described in these ways, please reach out to me and I will work with the team to resolve the issue. Today, we have a wonderful team of folks helping out run the meetup. There's myself from Foster Interactive, my coworker, Victoria Campbell, Joanne Crone, and Joanne from Daedalus Interactive, and Blake with Pantheon. So thank you very much to all the co-hosts. We couldn't do it without everyone helping us out. So there will be a survey at the end of the meetup, and it is super helpful for us. If you fill out that survey, it lets us know what we're doing well and what we can improve on, and let us know what kind of talks you would like to see in the future. So quick agenda for today. We're going to open with a welcome and sort of icebreaker. So we're going to break off into groups and get to know each other a little bit. Then we will move into the presentation, which should be about 40 minutes. And we'll have about 10 minutes of question and answer at the end of that. And then completely optional for everyone, if you'd like to join us, this kind of Drupal Toronto has always been almost as much as about socializing and interacting as it is about learning cool things about Drupal. So if you'd like to, we welcome everyone to join us, a kind of like a hangout afterwards for just casual chats, maybe talking some tech details. So you're more than welcome to continue past 1 o'clock. But if you got something to do, by all means, just hop off. So a few announcements coming up. DrupalCon Europe is coming up soon. Oh gosh, it's the 8th to 11th. And so it is in European time. So if you are an early riser, it's something that I could definitely consider checking out. Registration is online. Also wanted to note another interesting announcement is that DrupalCon Global 2020, which was over the summer, has released all the videos from that event. So it was delayed. They didn't initially launch the videos right away, I guess a couple months. And now those videos are all online. So there's all kinds of awesome, really interesting talks worth checking out on there. So I suggest check it out on their YouTube channel. Just a shout out now, if there are any jobs or announcements. So this is, we could, unmute yourself, hop on camera and let us know. I also just want to point out we have a Slack channel, which we want everyone to jump on, and there is a jobs channel within Slack. So does anyone have any announcements or job postings they'd like to shout out to the group?
No? Actually, I have one that I posted on behalf of a company on the West Coast. They're looking for a freelance Drupal developer, part-time. So you're able to do other things as well as a freelancer. Perfect.
Anyone else have any other announcements?
I have a job opening as well that I'd like to mention.
Sure.
Hi, I work at a place called Okazi, Ontario Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants. We have a web coordinator position up. I just can't find the link for it right now.
Sure.
But if you're just wondering why it's called web development coordinator, it's because all our job titles have coordinator at the end of it. But essentially, Okazi has a bunch of Drupal sites, and we're looking for a second web developer to join us to help us deal with all the various Drupal websites we have. So
perfect. So
I will share the link if I can find it.
Yeah, so join, if you're not on the DrupalTO Slack, join there. There's a link that'll be in the presentation. And then there's a jobs channel. So go ahead and if you can post in the link there, that would be perfect.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Amazing. Okay, perfect. So moving into breakouts and intros. So what we like to do now to sort of get that virtual version of the in-person sort of networking experience that we get at the regular in-person meetups is we're going to go into breakout rooms. So Zoom will pop up a box saying you've been assigned to a breakout room, and inside of there should be 4 or 5 folks, and just go ahead and join in. And what we like to do is just introduce ourselves and go through a quick sort of icebreaker questions. And just want to note that the breakout rooms are not recorded. We are recording this session for future reference, but don't leave the room early and come back. Just wait. There's like a timer that's going to run out, and you'll get a little bit of a warning. And just stay in the room until the timer runs out. So inside the breakout room, what we'd like to do is have you introduce yourself. So say your name, your company, or the project that you're working on. And so, and then an icebreaker question. So for this time, we're going to see, you know, as we head into the holidays, what food are you looking forward to enjoying? And if that's something you make, maybe share some details of the recipe or how you prepare it. If that's something you buy, maybe you can let us in on the secret of where you get that. So for me, just as an example, my name is Aiden. My company is Foster Interactive. We do a lot of work in the Drupal space, sort of focused on user experience design in B2B and higher ed websites. And for me, my favorite holiday food is deep fried turkey with Cajun spices. So we like dry brine it for 3 days in the fridge, which is like coated in salt, and dehydrate it basically, and then inject it with melted butter and lots of cayenne pepper. And then you deep fry it, and a turkey takes 35 minutes to cook in the deep fryer. So that's my example there. So let's jump into the breakout rooms and get to know each other.
Okay, I'm opening them up now. There'll be about 6 minutes on the clock, and you'll get a 30-second notification when the room's going to close.
It's just us. Uh-oh. Okay.
Oh no, there's someone else. We didn't screw up.
We left the breakout room and we're back in another breakout room. Infinitely, forever.
I felt like we were in
No.
some kind of a sci-fi movie where we went through the door and then we're like, where are they? Where did they go?
I see Victoria. She knows
Yeah.
what she's doing, so.
Automatically kick everyone out in 3,
Blake's here.
2, 1.
Here's Blake.
Get everyone back.
All right.
Perfect. All right. Sorry, let me just get the slides going here. Excellent. Everyone's back. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you got to know your group a little bit and learn some. I'm now more hungry than when I started, but that's great. We can hopefully, if you're having a little heavier lunch in front of you, you can grab a snack. So I'm very pleased now to introduce our main talk for today. So that's Goldilocks and the 3 projects, Behat, BDD, and getting the specs just right. So I'll turn it over to you. Our speaker today is Dan Friedman. Thank you.
Rock and roll. Okay, let's see if I can. Is somebody else is taking care of doing admissions on the folks waiting in the waiting room, right? I don't have to worry about that?
Nope.
Great, thanks. So we'll present.
So I'm going to stop share. Yeah, there you go.
It's all good. Here it comes. All right. Thanks very much, Aidan. It's good to see everybody. So I just wanted to welcome you all to the presentation on Goldilocks and the 3 projects. Can you see my screen?
Yes,
Yep,
we can.
see it.
Excellent. It looks like I can't get the view that I want, so let's try this view instead. That'll do. That'll do. I'm going to throw this away too. All right. Technical difficulties, etc. Goldilocks and the 3 projects. We're going to talk about Behat, BDD, and getting our specs just right. It's 12:19, and I've been told to keep it short. So I actually deliberately have kept it a bit short today. Thanks very much to Aidan and the team for inviting me here to do this. I am hopefully going to keep things short enough that we can decide a bit about. I'll present what I've got here and we can decide what direction at the end folks might want to hear more about when we get into questions. What's interesting about behavior-driven development, or BDD, is that it touches on a lot of different areas in the project space, whether you're talking about the folks doing actual product development and software stuff, or whether you're talking about the customer side, the product owner part. And it's really the interplay there that behavior-driven development seeks to actually make better. A quick note before we get started. In what follows, Goldilocks isn't the customer and is also not the development team. So we're all Goldilocks together. The customer and the development team have to work together to figure out the right solution to every customer problem. And so just to be clear, because it's possible for those of us who work in this kind of space to come across as knowing what we're doing better than the customer does, or being kind of patronizing, and that itself is an anti-pattern that we would always seek to avoid. So do your best. Now, who am I? My name is Dan Friedman. I'm not actually a Drupal developer. Shh. Don't tell anybody. But I play one on TV. I mean, I have some really smart colleagues at Consensus who you may already know from other Drupal community events, which I'm going to try to show you. Here we are. So perhaps you've heard of Christopher Gervais or Colin Schwartz. There's a little picture of me. Here's Derek Lavenger, who some of you may know. Matt Parker and Shona Lee are more recent additions to the team, but they're also awesome. And all these people are Drupal-y in one way or another. I work with, together we are Consensus Enterprises. We specialize in open source and Drupal and Agile. We're experts in the whole application lifecycle. These days we're mostly focused on social enterprises, on nonprofits and the public sector. And here are some of our partnerships, which are really exciting. A little bit more about me. I've been in web development since 1996, which means that I've been developing websites. Hang on a sec. I've been developing websites since they looked like this. And so if you are old enough like me to remember when websites looked like this, I used to make websites that looked like this when I played the saxophone more and had more hair. And so all to say that you probably wouldn't want me writing your HTML for you, but these days my kid who just taught himself React.js while he was stuck in lockdown informs me that that's not even a thing anymore. So there you go. In any case, in addition to web development, one way or the other, since 1996, I've also been automating deployment pipelines since before we used words like DevOps and config management. And I've been involved in test-driven development since the Agile Manifesto was some new thing that those of us doing extreme programming felt we could just kind of ignore and get back to doing interesting work. Things have obviously changed since then. Now I'm a partner at Consensus, and my focus is on Agile practices and DevOps. Everything cool? Am I? Everybody can hear me?
Yep, sounding great.
Great. Great. By the way, I do keep the Agile practices in DevOps stubbornly lowercase because I don't think they deserve capitals because there isn't just one Agile and there isn't just one DevOps. And those are practices that are informed by decades of previous experience that we can't ignore and that really require the right kind of expertise to pick and choose and put together the right practices for each situation. So here's a quick roadmap of my talk. It's in 3 pieces. We are all Goldilocks is the first part. There is no magic, and watch out for bears. That is to say, the first section, we are all Goldilocks. We're going to talk about the problem that is to be solved. There is no magic, but there is technology, and we want to watch out for bears or dragons or even people. And when I say technology, lots and lots of technology, and so I'm going to be trying to keep a balance between the technical deep dive as well as the people and project side of this conversation. But like I say, when we get to the end of the formal part and we get to the questions, folks can start to ask questions and we can see which way they're interested in finding out more. So section 1, we are all Goldilocks. So here's the problem. Look, we all know the traditional fairy tale, and if we look at it as a project, Goldilocks knows what she likes, and she likes things to be just right, and that's what you want in, let's say, a product owner or something. But in terms of how she actually goes about finding it, it's all trial and error, which is not the most efficient way. She has to try every option, right? She tries the small chair, the big chair, the small bed, the big bed, the hot porridge, the cold porridge. For anyone who's ever filled out a shred application, we like to call that systematic experimentation, and in that context, it's a good thing. But when you're trying to get stuff done with a client, it might not necessarily be the best approach if you can avoid it. She also doesn't really manage her risk very well. She breaks one of the chairs, she burns her tongue, and eventually she gets surprised by those bears coming home, which perhaps is a metaphor for an approaching a sudden project deadline or something like that. She does, however, fail fast, which is to say that when she has a problem, she knows she has it right away, and that's a really good situation for her to be in. Put this away. So I'd like to invite you to consider a slightly different perspective on Goldilocks' situation. Like I said, remember, Goldilocks is the whole team. It's not the service provider, and it's not the client. It's not the software developers, and it's not the product owners. It's not the people you're dealing with at your clients. It's not you on the software team. It's everybody together. But what if Goldilocks had gotten an invitation to the Bears hut instead of breaking in? And what if we took her to Sleep Country Canada or Leon's, and we asked her what kind of mattress she might like, or what kind of chair? And those are just questions to keep in the back of your mind as we start to think about what customers want, because that's really the key to how a lot of behavior-driven development approach is structured. So that's section 1. We'll look at section 2 now. There is no magic, but there certainly is technology, lots of computers. So not magic. You can't solve these kinds of problems, the kinds of miscommunications that happens on projects, et cetera, with magic, but you can give it a shot with behavior-driven development. Behavior-driven development has a lot of theory and heavy-duty stuff written about it. You should Google it. But basically what it boils down to is a fusion of business analysis, which is figuring out what your customer wants, which is to the benefit of the customer, obviously, and test-driven development, which is to say that we ensure what we are building actually works, which improves the development team's productivity. So if you put those two things together, we focus on what the customer wants, and we ensure we're actually providing it. And what's cool about this is those two things actually turn out to be mutually reinforcing. So because we focus on what the customer wants, we will build in a regular process of customer involvement. We will deliver business value as soon as possible and continuously. We'll deliver in short iterations. We'll make small feature sets. We'll make sure everything is fully deployed every cycle. And we'll articulate the tests that we use to figure out if we're done in language that the customer can understand. And that's super important to the approach here with BDD. Because we keep our tests focused on the behavior of the product, not how it works under the hood, not what any of the implementation details might be. And since they're written in language that the customer can understand and in consultation with the customer, these tests ensure that we're actually providing what the customer wants. So the basic building block when we get into BDD is the user story. And ideally, these are written by the customer themselves, or at least in consultation with the customer. And they're usually in this form. This is probably something that many of you are familiar with already. As a particular type of user in the system, I want to do some kind of task so that I can achieve some kind of a goal. And we translate those user stories into scenarios that describe behavior. So given some kind of initial condition, when I do something in the system, then I should expect a specific outcome. So given, when, then is a really powerful metaphor for understanding how users interact with systems, and in particular, how they interact with websites, which when you're a Drupal developer, as I assume most of you are, when you're a Drupal developer, is something you have to deal with all the time. Just gonna grab some water. Now, Behat is a PHP framework for BDD. It integrates with Drupal through a headless browser called Mink. I'm providing a link to the docs here, and I think someone's helping me by dropping those into the chat. But basically, Behat allows for the integration of these concepts into a PHP or Drupal workflow. One creates what are called features, which sort of map to the user story format in a language called Gherkin, which is, as they describe it, a business readable domain specific language. So the point is that it's meant to be understandable to your business, to your stakeholders, right? This is English. This isn't computer code that they're looking at, right? In order to access administrative functions as a power user, I need to be able to log into the site. That's a sentence. Now, in the case of the user stories, in the final implementation within Behat, these actually just act as comments. But what comes next is a little more interesting, which is to say that the scenarios that you work out for each individual interaction that's going to take place in the system that are associated with a particular test, those scenarios are in given, when, then format. And what that looks like, corresponding to the user story on the previous slide, right, which is all about logging in, you can see here that it's phrased in a given, when, then format. So the scenario is called logging into the site. Given I'm not logged in, when I'm on the user login page and I enter dev for the username and pwd for the password, and I press login, then I should be on /user/1 and I should see member 4. So what you've got here is exactly enough information and functionality that this speaks to both your business person, your stakeholder, your domain expert who you're designing your site for, and to your technical implementer, right? They both see what they need to see reflected in this specification. And so what works really well when this works is that both sides of the house can sort of agree on what the specification is, and that's what's key to making sure that what's being built is what the customer actually wants. Yeah, so the other piece that, besides Behat, that we work with is Drumkit, which is an automation framework for Drupal and Behat DevOps. It's got lots of other stuff that it supports these days, like Hugo and Igor and other stuff I'm listing out here. But basically, the Behat part of it extends a class in the Behat framework called Context to provide some command line testing abilities along with the Drupal kind of front-endy web interaction ones. So I'm going to show a couple of examples, and basically what these examples are going to be is actual examples that we use or have used for in various situations of how we've used Behat to try and affect this better communication, or this ability to at least have a shared conception with the client of what of what it is that we're building, and making sure that what we're building is the right thing. So I'm just going to take a second and set this up. Great. So I'm actually going to show an example that'll be familiar to at least some people on this presentation, which is something that we built for the Ontario Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants, which is something called a community of practice. Those of you who've done web development of that type in social organizations or social enterprises before will be familiar with this. And this is just to show an example of how we can use some simple automated test and reformatting code to create a display, like a heads-up display of what the requirements for a certain project are and where the tests are that are actually demonstrating that these requirements are being fulfilled. So this was actually, this part of this project was a huge success, and it looks like it worked out quite well. So basically what we have here, so when you see every one of these sentences is taken from the initial requirements discussions that we had with the client. And those are all given, each of those is given a number in the document. And these things down the left-hand side link back to that initial discussion. On the right-hand side, you'll see these things that all say results. This whole thing is all just a Hugo site, by the way. And so in the case where, and so in basically for every one of these sentences, the COP is the community of practice. And so this is a description of what the COP would be able to do. And so as we implemented each one of these requirements, we were able to demonstrate that we had actually implemented it by showing that there were, we're not just saying we've done it, here we'll show you that we've done it because we've actually run a Behat test, and here's a result. There is something wrong with my internet. Can everybody still hear me?
I can, yes.
And can you still see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
So we're seeing screen
All right,
grab.
I have a theory about what's going on. No, my theory is incorrect. Funny that I'm getting the no internet page when in fact I do have the internet. Let's reload this guy. Nope. All right, there we go. So having clicked on any one of those requirements, apologies for the infrastructure issues here at my house, they take you through to this listing, which we've collected from the actual running CI tests that are running Behat tests. So for any one of these requirements, or any group of these requirements, we've used Behat's tagging facility to map those to a specific feature or user story, and then to run the actual tests and to show that they're actually passing down here for each one of them. So this is the link that you would follow, and of course each one of these requirements is a link that's coming from that table that I just showed you. So let's just see how my internet is doing. It looks interesting. So I'm not getting any CSS. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. There we go. All right, so here we have the requirements test results, and that's what we get as we click through them. Serious bandwidth. All right. Well, we will leave this result for this example for now, and move back to my next example, which is to show how we actually use Behat in our CI, in our continuous integration processes. So Drumkit itself, which is that framework that I was talking about, provides a bunch of integration between our development workflows and the various tools that we like to use, things like Ansible, things like Terraform, like Drupal, and like Behat itself. One of the things that we like to do is we use GitLab's CI/CD pipelines to actually run tests against Drumkit itself, which are run with Behat. And I'm not sure why I can't load anything. So this is causing me some trouble. Just going to try one more thing. There we go. There was a dangling socks proxy. The case of the dangling socks proxy. All right. So here we are with Drumkit. And here we are looking at its pipelines in GitLab CI. And we can see that any one of these has passed, whatever. So looking at a specific commit, we can see that specific tests were run in a pipeline. And the nifty part is that you actually get your full Behat output in the GitLab CI. So that's really nice.
It's worth noting that
and I
green
just wanna...
means passed and red means failed.
Yes, thanks you, Matt. So I'm a bit derailed by my infrastructural irregularities here. I apologize. So for example, here is a test that we wrote that where we like to use Lando, and we might want to start a new Drupal project. So when you do that, as a Drupal developer, I need to be able to initialize a new Drupal project. And so here we have some tests that are actually running, and every time they run showing green output, that's a test that has passed. So Behat has actually run through this scenario, and it's actually done the tasks that are described here. So when I run this command, then I should see these kinds of results. And you'll see that so here's Drumkit essentially testing itself. It's ensuring that Drumkit itself can set up a new Drupal project. And this is actually some custom code that we've added to Behat that I was talking about using the context to extend it, to allow it to run things on the command line and to show that, for example, when I run a certain command, here's what I should see in the resulting output. Or here's some files that should exist, or here that the contents of that file should look a certain way. So those are some of the things that we've added to Behat for our own use, so that when we're doing these operations on the file system, we can test that they're actually doing what we expect them to do, treating ourselves as the customer in that case. Great. So now I can show the requirements from the COP that I was talking about. Like I say, when you click on one of these results, you actually get through to see the results for the test that you're actually talking about. And so some of these can get quite involved. You can see that Behat links, has integration with a lot of Mink functionality on the front end that's quite complicated. So you can talk about seeing links, you can talk about seeing headings, you can get very specific with what you expect to see. And you can even talk about clicking, right? And so what happens here is that Behat will actually instruct Mink to actually click through. And so there's actual HTTP requests going back and forth between your test code and the server that you're running. So those are a couple of examples. I'm looking at the time, and I'm thinking that rather than diverting with further technical detail at this point, what I want to do is get back to talking a bit more about the next section of my talk. So if people want to see some more technical detail, we can always do another talk. We can talk more about Drumkit at some point in the future. There's other topics that we'd love to talk to you about. We can talk about config and force, which I haven't even had the chance to talk about today. But for now, I'm going to go back to my slides. All right, so those are our Behat and Drumkit examples. And so there is no magic, but there's lots of technology for enabling you to work with these tools. The third part is that we still have to watch out for bears. And that is to say, bears or dragons or people or other unpredictable things that can show up and really change how things are going for us on the project. So it would be irresponsible for me not, after having shown you a bunch of technology that we use that tries to help facilitate good communication between project teams and stakeholders, it would be irresponsible not to point out that you can't solve a people problem with a technical solution. And that is to say that there's still no magic. It's actually just people. And what that means is that these practices that I've just described still can't succeed without proper upfront investment in your project and ongoing stakeholder engagement. There are other things, of course, that can make your project fail, as anyone who's worked in any kind of project team knows. But these are two of the big ones that occurred to me when I was putting this presentation together. So it's not really optional to have, this is stuff you can't skip. You have to build a great team. You still have to have solid test infrastructure. You still have to have good automation in place. And you still have to have solid organizational support for your project, or else having all those technologies behind you, it's actually not going to fix your problem. You're also going to need good stakeholder engagement, which is to say that the product owners, the customer domain experts, the people that have the knowledge about the problem that you're trying to solve for them, and the decision-making power have to make themselves available throughout the project, or else the consultation you're having isn't really going to be very meaningful. And I've seen that on projects before, and I'm sure some of you have as well. The other problem is that the people you're talking to, who you expect to be the product owners, have to be empowered decision makers in the client organization. In other words, you have to be able to rely on the information they're giving you when you're on the project team, so that if you say, look, is this done? Or is this the thing that you want, right? We have to be able to trust Goldilocks. If we're saying, is this too hard, is this too soft, we need to be able to trust that her answer is final and is the correct answer. Or else the consultation is just a waste of time, right? If you're asking Goldilocks that question and what she says is, well, I think this is too hard, but really we have to go ask my manager, except we can't get hold of them, or you're not allowed to talk to them, or they're not really interested in this project. It's kind of a waste of time to be doing that consultation. So those are the kinds of things that, despite how really interesting and awesome some of these technologies are, those things are still going to get in your way if you're trying to actually succeed on a project. So like I said, I thought it was kind of irresponsible to point out, these are these technologies that we use, if I don't also point out that the people side still has to be working properly. You still have to specifically be working with engaged stakeholders who make themselves available to the project. So to recap, the customer and your development team have to work together to figure out the right solution to the customer's problem. They can do this through frequent consultation about behavior and allowing behavior to drive development through testing. Behat and Drumkit are technical tools that can be helpful parts of the puzzle for Drupal teams, in combination with upfront investment and ongoing stakeholder engagement. In other words, we're all Goldilocks together. There is no magic. Watch out for bears. So I'm going to try to open things up for questions now to find out what parts of this presentation people might like to find out more about, or if you have any questions about what I said, if any of it wasn't clear. And thanks very much for listening.
Perfect. So thank you so much. That's amazing. That was a really great presentation. So if you have a question and you're comfortable with hopping on camera or hopping on audio, please do. If you're not comfortable with that, pop it in the chat, and then we can read it out on your behalf. And just to start us off, I have a question. I'm kind of curious, Dan, if you could outline the relationship, just give me a quick overview of Drumkit as an infrastructure. Like, how does it play in? I'm not familiar with it, so
absolutely.
Where does it go in the mix?
Well, so, I mean, the truth of the matter is it's quite complex, and this is actually another topic, right? We should do a whole presentation on Drumkit someday. But very quickly to show you, so for example, what I have here is a project called Config Enforce Local Dev, which is a piece of the Config Enforce ecosystem. So this is a set of Drupal modules that we're working on right now that actually relates to another topic we should present about, which is CMI2. Is it 2? Whatever, no, 3, whatever number we're on now. Basically, configuration management in more modern versions of Drupal, be it 8, 9, 10, whichever one we're working on this week. But basically, So a big part of, but what we have here is just a Drupal project. So this is just a plain Jane kind of Drupal site where we've brought in these two modules that you can see are directories down here at the bottom, config enforce and config enforce devel. So that's all you need to know to understand what I'm showing you. So you'll also see that in this directory, there's a make file. There's a file called D and a directory called Drumkit. Okay. There's also a hidden file, a hidden directory called .mk, which you can see sort of in alphabetical order there. So those are all pieces of Drumkit. The make file itself, basically Drumkit is just a set of automation tools that we use for basically automating things we find ourselves doing over and over again in ways where across our whole development team, we want to be able to standardize. So rather than every individual developer, let's say, having their own style or their own, like, oh, I like to do things this way when I do Drupal development. That's great when you're a lone wolf and doesn't work very well when you're trying to share code across a team, especially one that's geographically distributed as we are. We have people in Toronto, Waterloo, sometimes Nova Scotia, Montreal, right? So we're quite far flung from each other. And so having a toolkit that we can use to kind of standardize that stuff is where this toolkit came into place. It predates Consensus. Christopher Gervais, who's one of our partners, developed it originally to do the kind of thing I'm describing in his own work, but we've kind of taken it and I know I've written a lot of code in it and stuff like that. The way it fits in here in particular is that it means that a lot of the activities you would perform when you're doing kind of Drupal ops, so I want to install the site, I want to build my code base again, I want to update, Composer or something, a lot of those operations I would do by using make commands on the command line, right? So this automates a lot of this stuff. The other thing that that this framework can do is we have a lot of tools for setting up brand new projects. So that Behat test I was showing you before, that was running in our CI, right? What that was doing was actually testing the initialization of a new Drupal project. So the way you would do it is you would say make init project. You would actually say make init project Drupal. This is testing all of its sub pieces. That's how you would create a new project. In the case of this project here, for example, if I want to run Behat, the way I do it is I run make tests. And so you'll see that that's actually going to run our PHP unit tests first inside Lando. And so all of this stuff is kind of happening without me having to do a lot of extra stuff. So now we're going to start running through all the Behat tests that are associated with this project. And all I had to do was say make tests. So there's a couple of these sort of high level, really powerful commands that you need to know as a Drumkit user that will basically unleash a lot of this kind of automation power for you. And the documentation is an ongoing target, but it is coming soon. One last little thing about it is that if you're trying to find out what it can do for you, and I just type make without any parameters, it'll actually give me a list of just about everything if I'm in a project that has it set up correctly, which apparently this one does not. So I can't show that today. But if this were a Drumkit presentation and I was ready, I would be able to show it to you. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Okay, awesome.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Nathan.
Hi. Yeah, so my question is, you mentioned, that you're with your customers, you're writing Behat tests. Can you kind of show a little bit how that sausage is made? And also, are there certain tests that they won't bother, let's say, writing, they kind of hand wave, and ones that they focus more than others? I noticed in the tests is you get into lots of granular detail, obviously, because you're testing all the parts of the website. How does that process work with, let's say, your OCASI client?
Right. So I think the way that this has worked in a lot of our situations, and again, I don't think I'm saying anything inappropriate here, is that what we've done with our clients in general. OCASI is one where we've done this. They're not the only ones. Where we have a sort of a workshop right? So what we typically like to do is to have the conversation with them. And this is less of a PHP or Drupal specific thing and more of a kind of an extreme programming or agile, approach, where we have a workshop with them where we work out the user stories with them. And that conversation takes place with, your usual accoutrement like index cards and markers and stuff like that and whiteboards and all that good stuff. But basically what we do is we have that conversation with them and produce a list of these user stories. And we do actually, we've done things where we've sat with a client for 3 days and said, let's get everybody in a room and start hammering out, what do you want this system to do? The system doesn't do what you want it to right now. Start describing who you are in the system. So I am a membership coordinator. I'm a content creator. I'm, an administrator of the site. Whatever your role is, start talking about it in terms of these user stories. Then we take that consolidated list of user stories, and this is sort of classic kind of vanilla Scrum almost, right? We put it into a backlog where we then reflect it back to the client and say, okay, this is what we think you said, right? And can you help us articulate these into, which ones are the most important? Once we've kind of gone through that whole process of figuring out, okay, which chunk of work are we going to do first? Then we start to break those down into individual scenarios. We try to keep the aspects that we talk to our customers about in language that our customers and us can both understand, right? And so this is what I was talking about in the talk, right? Like these sentences are all in English. This is not, when you look at this stuff, you're not looking at it in some kind of code. When we get down to actually implementing them, sometimes we end up, computers can be complicated, and so we may have to end up implementing things that are quite a lot more complicated. That's sort of an aspect of, the real world. What we like to do, though, is to keep a separation, if possible, between, to try to keep the scenarios, at least, or the high-level feature descriptions, at least in a format that everybody can understand, so that it's a conversation that we can continue to have with the business, so that the business folks don't have to feel like if they're not IT workers, they don't have a seat at the table. But that's clear enough so that when we go then to implement the sort of nitty-gritty granular side, we have enough information to go on. That's sort of the guiding principles we like to work on. Now, in every project, does it always work out perfectly? Probably not, right? We're all Goldilocks. We're all lost in the woods together. Sometimes we find the bear hut and sometimes we don't even make it, right? There's lots of different metaphors one can use. But basically, the idea is if we use these principles and practices to guide us, we find that typically we get better results than if we don't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I saw your colleague wanted to also say something.
Oh, which colleague?
Shona.
Yeah.
Shona. Hello, Shona.
Hi, Dan. I was just, those particular tests that you were showing, that Make Init project, I think in that particular case, we are the users for those users.
Well, that's the other thing.
So that's the backend developer one. So those are the tests that we wrote for ourselves to prove that Drumkit was working the way we expected it to. So those ones aren't ones that we would show to an end client, but those are in fact our own user stories for us. So
that's true.
It just happens that that one that came up in the scroll is more relevant to us than it is to Ocasio.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I was speaking to, a lot of those tests are like really, really granular. So I'm imagining those ones you would write yourself. You're really focusing with them on the top level requirements and the backlog, but like when you're actually writing the Behat test, you're writing those tests, not the client, correct?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's what I did say. I'm sorry if that wasn't, I hope that was clear in the slides, right? You take those user stories and translate them into scenarios. Right. That is definitely something, you as a developer would need to do. What's nice about it, though, is that, like in the case of the requirements list that I'm showing here.
Right, they can still read
these are, people can still read this. Computers can read them, but also people can understand what's going on here, right? Like this is not arcane, right? I should see a certain link is something that we can all understand, right? And so what this means is you can review this with your users or your customers and say, did I get this right? Does this do what you think you were asking for? You know, and you can drill down into quite a low level of detail with them on this because it's in English, because you're not showing them PHP unit and trying to get them to read it.
I got a quick follow-up on that one. Could you pull up 16? So BR16, which to me is like, so as a user experience focused person,
right.
Make sure the navigation is simple and elegant. So that's
so I will say
to test from a machine point of view.
Right. So what we did was that. So there's obviously some offline conversations that were going on between, you know, the product team and the client. This is not, I'm not advocating this as a like be all and end all UX tool by any means, right? It's very far from that. What it is that if we could understand what we all meant together, right? If we could create a shared definition of done, essentially in this case, right? Of like, what characteristics does the system have to have in order for that to be acceptable? Or, for example, is the following solution one that is acceptably simple and elegant, right? That was, right, so here we had, for example, as a site user, I want to easily find groups and discussions. That's really what it boiled down to when we spoke. And it looks like Chris Gervais is on the call, which is great, and he's got his hand up, and he was involved in more of this particular conversation than I was. So Christopher, can someone give Christopher a voice?
Yep. Go ahead.
Or can he do it himself?
Can you hear me?
Hey, how are you?
Yes, we can.
Hi.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, just for some context, in this particular case, there had been a like year and a half of internal analysis that had gone on that resulted in the requirements that we were starting with.
Mm-hmm.
And note that the requirements aren't in user story format, right? They're more discursive of the community of practice shall do this thing, right? Which is also in a passive voice. So these are things that are hard to, as a developer, kind of sink your teeth into. It's both vague in this case and in this passive voice. So it doesn't describe how somebody would actually interact with an application or what the application would actually do. So by having conversations with them that refocused on, okay, what do you mean by it being an elegant, or easy to use system? And we came up with some examples of things, and then we implemented those examples. And that was essentially how we approached a lot of these things, because there was about, like, I think 200 requirements in all. And so a lot of what we did in terms of putting this particular site together was really just trying to get our arms around all of that and make sure that we were responding to everything. And so this, I wouldn't say that the testing is complete in the sense of, for easy to use navigation, we have a couple of examples that we've implemented as tests. We haven't tagged all of the stuff that would be good examples necessarily, and we haven't implemented tests for everything because this was also built on top of Open Social, so it extends an existing platform, and we didn't do a lot of testing of the base platform. We assumed that the upstream testing would cover that from a reliability standpoint. So anyway, all of that to say that this was a challenging project walking into it because of the way the requirements were structured, and that these tools really helped us to be able to demonstrate how we delivered on these rather broad, rather vague requirements in some cases, right? Some were very specific, but in a lot of cases it was these sort of broader, vaguer questions or requirements. And so this was a really useful tool and process to sit down with them and kind of figure out, okay, well, what does this mean to you? What does it mean for it to be easy to use, right? And then that led to a lot of productive discussions around, what would be sufficient to satisfy that requirement.
Amazing.
Does that make sense?
It does. Okay, perfect. That's awesome. So thank you so much, everyone, for participating today. We're out of time, but there's still a lot of good conversations happening. I'm most certainly going to ask you about the config enforce module right after this call and learn a little bit more. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And I was just going to take over the screen share briefly. I just wanted to ask everyone if they could please go to bit.ly.com/DTO in uppercase -3. Please go and please fill out the survey. We will be sending a recording of this presentation around to everyone over the next few days. So thank you so much, Dan, for your awesome presentation. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending. If you're interested in chatting, please just stay on the line. And if not,